Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our August Green Bites Zoom video. So today we are going to be talking about fall gardening in southern Indiana, some of the steps you can take to get your garden ready, what kind of plants you can plant, doing winter cover crops in your garden at home or bigger scale are all things that we're going to cover today. So we are out in the field today on a beautiful August day at our Warrick 4-H garden that we have at the fairgrounds here. So this is a garden that's taken care of by the Warrick Soil and Water Conservation District and Purdue Extension as well. So we've got a rain garden out here that you guys can come out and see, and we are going to be planting in these beds that are right behind me. We're going to be planting some vegetables and some cover crops today. So come along with us and we can tell you a little bit about what we do and how we can help you get your fall garden off to the right start. So one of the first things that a lot of gardeners might want to do is get their soil tested so that you know what sort of elements and nutrients you already have in the soil that you're working with. So one thing that we do at the office for Warrick SWCD is for urban vegetable gardens, we provide 2 free soil samples through our office. So somebody in the office will come out to your garden, or you can bring in the samples for us. We'll take the samples, send them off to a lab. We'll get the results back, give them to you, and we can talk you through anything that comes back on those labs. They come back with nitrogen, phosphorus, pH, soil organic and organic matter. So they can be a really good way to figure out what you have in the soil, what amendments you might want, or what amendments you might not want because you have too much of something, and it can get you started on the right step for your fall garden. Something that we'll use at the office is a soil core or soil probe. So I have a little one right here, but this is what you will stick into the ground to pull out your soil sample, because the sample that you want really is going to be 3 to 4 inches depth of your garden. So you're not going to want that top part of the soil, and you don't want really too deep of your soil, but you want where most of your roots are going to be growing. That's the part that you want to send off to the lab to have tested. So having one of these is really good, but you can also get those samples using just a regular trowel or shovel, as long as you're careful not to mix in too much of the topsoil or the really deep soil into your sample, so that you have a nice, pure representation of what is in your garden. So one of the first things we're going to talk about are cover crops for your garden. So cover crops are plants that you can grow in your garden or on your field during a period of time where you normally wouldn't be growing anything. So for the context of a fall garden, over the winter is a great time to have cover crops. The idea is that you will keep living roots on your garden year-round. So you'll have cover with the growth at the surface, but you'll also have roots that are living and growing in the ground. And that will help cut down on any erosion that you might get during the winter when normally there wouldn't be anything growing. It'll help water infiltrate into your ground, and then at the end of that season, when you are ready to plant something, you can terminate or kill that cover crop and leave the residue behind, and that can be a good way of getting a head start on nutrient building for your spring garden or whenever you're ready to plant again the next season. So for our garden, we are going to be planting spring oats and winter peas. So it's a mix that comes together. But at the office, we are going to have some cover crop seed available that is a mix of daikon radish, crimson clover, and spring oats as well. So we'll have that available for free in our office coming up soon. But we're doing spring oats and winter peas here. So something that's also going to be nice, having a mix of 2 or 3 cover crop species, is you'll be maximizing your biodiversity over your garden, and it will just help minimize any disturbance that might happen over the winter when you wouldn't be growing anything. So terminating can be a little tricky for some cover crops. So you want to make sure before you plant anything in your garden, research what kinds of cover crops will bring different nutrients to your field. So if you are deficient in nitrogen, you might want to find cover crops that will fix nitrogen to your soil. And you want to make sure you know what is the plan for when you want the cover crop to be removed, so that you aren't scrambling in the spring trying to get rid of something that is really difficult to get rid of. So a great tool that we've used in the office and that I recommend to everyone is something called the Midwest Cover Crop Tool. So it's put out by the Midwest Cover Crop Council. It is online. If you type in Midwest Cover Crop Tool, it'll usually be the first thing that pops up. And it is a really simple tool, easy to use. You pick your state, so you would pick Indiana, or you can pick any state on their list. You can choose a goal on that site, and some of their goals include erosion fighting, nitrogen source, weed fighting, grazing, and a bunch of other goals. So you say, what do I want for my garden? And you pick those. And then you can choose your cash crop, which could be corn or wheat, but could also be warm or cool season vegetables, and there's a bunch of other options on there. And that will take all that information and tell you these are the cover crops that will work for your area and will fulfill your goals that you want for your garden, and when is the best time to plant them. And it'll tell you the best time to plant, as well as some riskier planting dates as well that are closer to the winter most of the time. A lot of the cover crops for southern Indiana, you're going to want to plant anywhere from August to October, which can give you a little bit of flexibility. So if you want some vegetables in your fall garden, you're not ready to close up your cash crop, then August is a great time to be planting your vegetables so that you can harvest them later in the fall and still have time to plant your cover crop, which will last through the winter and keep all of those living roots and organic matter on top of your garden throughout that time that you're not growing food or vegetables. So while I was talking, in the background, Sydney was planting some of the spring oats and winter peas in our beds. If you saw it, she scattered the seeds down into our bed that we have completely bare. So we pulled out all the residue or any of the straggling weeds that were in this bed until it was bare soil. We actually added some soil to this before we came out here. Planted those seeds so they had as much soil contact as possible, and then went over it with a small trowel or even just with your hands to really work that seed in. So that's going to keep it from getting washed away with the first rain or getting eaten up by any birds that are coming by. And it's going to give that seed a really good soil contact so that you can get a good stand of your cover crop growing in your bed. So another resource from the Midwest Cover Crop Council are these cover crop field guides. So we have some of these in the office. So if you want to come by and pick one of these up for free, you are welcome to do so. We will have them until we run out. So definitely stop by if you're interested in one of these. But it has got all kinds of information and pictures on cover crops that we would use here in Indiana. But it also has information about terminating cover crops, getting establishment on your cover crops, looking out for insects or any diseases that might be affecting them. So this is just a really good resource, especially if you are interested in starting cover crops, but you might be worried about what to plant, or maybe you have done cover crops once or twice, but you want to expand your mix so that you have more biodiversity. Then this can be a really good guide to tell you everything you need to know about cover crops in southern Indiana. All right, so now let's talk about the vegetables that you're going to be planting in your garden for the fall. So we're actually going to be planting some plants in this garden bed today. You might notice that we've already got something growing in this bed. So we have some marigolds growing. It can be good to have some companion plants or companion flowers growing next to or even right in your vegetable garden, because there are a lot of flowers that can be pest resistant, so they can help your vegetable garden keep away pests, things that will come in and eat all your vegetables up. So they can be really good for that, and then it can bring a little color to your vegetable garden as well with some beautiful flowers. So that's one reason that we've got these kept right here in our bed. We're still out here at the 4-H garden, so you're always welcome to come out here and visit anytime you like. If you're bored one day, you can come out and weed for us too. We always need volunteers to come help us weed because it never ends. So we've got these beds planted. We're gonna have these beds planted with some fall vegetables like broccoli, celery, and kale. So all three of those are common fall garden varieties of food that you're gonna want to grow this time of year. We have plants started for all these in this bed. So we didn't grow these from seeds, but they started as plants. You'll want to do a little research this time of year on what can be planted by seed during certain times of the year and what needs to be started indoors or started as a seedling before it gets planted. That can be really important for a fall garden depending on your timing of planting. So getting too late into the season, you wouldn't want to start broccoli by seed. It's something that will need to take a lot of time to grow. You would want to start that sooner if you're going to be going by seed, or have them start inside and then plant them as sprouts. But things like kale or even celery, you would be okay planting by seed because they're going to grow really quickly right away. You don't have to worry too much about timing them on an indoor seeding or anything. So something that is going to be one of your best friends when you're planting your garden are the tags that come with your vegetables. So when we got these plants, they all came with a little tag. I've got broccolis with me right now, but this has got information on what sort of light this plant can tolerate, full sun for over 6 hours in the case of broccoli. It can tell me about the spacing, so the suggested spacing on your plants as you're planting them, just so they have plenty of room to grow out as big as possible without jutting up against any other plants. It's also got planting depth information, as well as, very importantly, how long it will take this plant to mature. In the case of broccoli, this says 57 days after planting, this broccoli will be mature for harvesting. That's really important because when you are planting in the fall, you are eventually going to be running into frost days. So a frost day is any day when the minimum temperature is at or below 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, which is freezing. So anytime that the air temperature is freezing or lower, that is a frost day for our area. In southern Indiana, first frost is usually going to be something like late October into November. Could be sooner or later, it really just depends. Whereas our last frost is going to be somewhere like mid-April, even further into April if it's a particularly cold winter. So you want to keep in mind, when do I think first frost is going to be? So you have to do a little bit of guessing or a little bit of predicting, and then backdate how long it's going to take your plant to get to maturity. Another important thing is to know, can my plant survive a frost, or is it going to start to die as soon as those freezing temperatures come in? So we say that plants can be frost hardy, frost tolerant, or not frost tolerant at all, or sensitive to frost. And you can find that information a lot of times in books or online. Sometimes the seed tags will even tell you if your plant is going to be frost hardy or tolerant. So a plant that is frost hardy can withstand multiple heavy frosts a lot of times. So it can go through multiple days where temperatures are at or below freezing, and well below freezing. Whereas frost-tolerant plants, they can survive light frost, so still freezing temperatures, but maybe not really, really cold from those freezing, from that freeze limit, and maybe not, it can't survive too many frosts over and over again. So it can survive a light frost or a few light frosts, but not a really heavy frost or multiple really heavy frosts. And then sensitive plants are most likely going to die at the first frost. They can't survive past that first frost of the season. So things like Things like kale are going to be frost hardy, so they can survive into temperatures. So you may not be as worried about when your kale is going to be ready to harvest because it can survive some of those frost dates. Whereas plants like peas, if you're going to be planting any peas in your garden, they are sensitive, so they are not going to survive that first frost at all. Going back to cover crops, that's one of the reasons that peas might be a good cover crop for you, because they can't tolerate frost. So they will automatically terminate at that first frost or a few frosts in because they just can't survive. So you don't even have to worry about terminating peas because they will naturally terminate at that first frost. So you want to be sure you know, is my plant going to survive some frost? When is my plant supposed to be reaching maturity, so that you can plan accordingly on, I should be planting this in August, or I should be planting this no later than the start of October. And then that will make sure that you don't end up with any plants that get right up to maturity, but right before you harvest them, they die because we had that first frost in late October or in November. So you always want to keep an eye on those dates. So let's say that you've got some things growing in your garden, but maybe frosts are unexpectedly coming up sooner than you planned, or maybe the nights are getting really cold, but during the day your plants are completely fine. You might want to consider covering your garden or even individual plants. So you can cover plants to protect them during the night, or if there is a big frost that you're expecting to come through one evening, then you could always cover your plant to prep for that. You want to make sure you're not using something like plastic. You want to use something that can breathe or that air can pass through it so that you're not smothering the plant. And then if it's still getting warm during the day, you don't want to leave your cover on for too long, because you might actually heat that plant up too much. It could wither or it could take some heavy damage from the leaves. And then of course you don't want to cover up your plant away from the sun for too long. But if you're running up to that those first frost days, but you're not quite ready for your garden to be harvested, or they come up a little sooner, you can always consider covering with something like canvas or a sheet. You can even do hoops if you're worried about crushing your plant, if you've got a heavy material you want to use to cover. But it's sort of keeping your plant safe from just those extreme cases where you might have an extreme frost move in all of a sudden unexpectedly. Alright, so you might notice our beds look a little different than you saw just a second ago. So we came out and we put some straw on these. You can see our vegetables are still poking through from where we planted them from container, but we've got a bunch of straw on top of this now. You might have seen people using straw in their gardens. It can do a couple things for your garden. One, it's really good at suppressing weeds. So it's going to be a lot harder for any weeds to grow up in between our vegetables now, because that soil is all shaded underneath this straw. It's hard for the sun to get down into it to awaken any weed seeds that might be in there. It can also help control your soil temperature. So for fall gardening, that's going to be keeping the soil at more of a regulated temperature. It can help keep the soil warm when it's getting really cold. And on really hot days, it can keep it cooler. So it just helps to moderate the soil temperature. So it's not too hot or too cold for your vegetables. And it can also help control soil moisture in the same way. So this is going to help keep some of your moisture down under this straw where your plants need it, so it's not getting evaporated away by that intense August and September sun that we might be getting. Something else is this straw can break down. So you're not going to have to worry about cleaning up the straw at the end of the season. It's going to break down and it's going to leave behind all that organic material and any nutrients from the straw. It'll leave it behind in your soil, which can give you some nutrients for your fall garden, but can definitely give you a great head start in the spring, just in the same way that cover crops can. It's just sort of keeping something on the soil so that you're not losing it all by erosion, and then it's helping just to regulate the conditions for your vegetables so that they don't get too overwhelmed by any temperature fluctuations, especially here in southern Indiana, where it might be really cold in the night and really hot during the day. You might need that regulation. So So we've got a seed packet right here that you can pick up from the store. So this is just one example of a seed packet. There's a lot of different kinds, but they all usually have the same information on them, which is the species or variety on the front, and then on the back you can find planting times, as well as what sort of sun they need, what sort of water or moisture they'll need, seed depth to plant, seed spacing, and the days to maturity or the harvest time of your plant. So this one has a map on it as well, so you can find our area, which is right between green and yellow, which means you can usually do green or yellow for our area since we're right on the line. You can see exactly when is a great time to plant this, and you can see all the information about planting this in your garden. All right, so now we are going to plant some vegetables by seeds. So we've got some seed packets here. I've got carrots, spinach, and turnips that we're going to be planting in this bed. And so we're going to start out with the carrots here, but I can use the back of the seed packet to find the information about planting these carrots, and it can tell me that these seeds need to be planted at a 1/4 inch depth at 2-inch spacing between plants. So we are going to just eyeball it rather than measuring, but a 1/4 inch isn't too deep, so we don't need to plant these very deep into the soil. And then if I can get some of these seeds out, I can show you some of these carrot seeds that are very small. I don't want to let them blow away in the wind, but they're very small. So we're just going to be putting a pinch each way, because you want to make sure, a lot of times with planting by seed, you're going to want to put more than just one seed in each spot, just because for whatever reason the seeds may not germinate or they may not be at the right conditions. So you want to have the best chance possible at one of those plants coming up. And if you have way too many in one spot, you can always just pull them later before they get too big, to let the ones that you do want to grow up have as much room as possible. So we are going to come in here. We've got these two sort of shallow rows dug into the ground, but not too deep, because it's just a 1/4 inch depth. And then we can just put in a pinch of seeds each way, and then I'm just going to eyeball about 2 inches. It's all right if you're not exact, just because whenever they say on the seed packet you want to plant this far apart, what they want is to make sure that whatever you're planting has plenty of room to get as big as possible, so that you don't have plants stealing from each other, or you end up with a bunch of really, really small plants because there's not enough room or nutrients to go around. So really you just want to make sure that they are a good distance apart, but you don't have to measure every time. Okay. So now that we've got the seeds in those rows, we're going to go ahead and just cover them up. So these didn't have to go very deep, so just a shallow amount of soil. It's important to know the depth of your seeds, because if you plant them too deeply, then they may not sprout at all. And if you plant them too shallowly, then they won't have enough room to grow as much as they would like to. So it's important that you get that nice and covered, nice soil to seed contact right there. All right, so you have got your fall garden started. You got all your plants growing in the garden. Everything's going well, and suddenly some of your plants start to not look so good. Maybe they've got a disease, maybe they're getting eaten by bugs, maybe your soil conditions just weren't right for some reason. No matter what your problem is, I bet you can find an answer through Purdue Extension. So online, Purdue has a lot of resources on gardening, especially for southern Indiana or for your local area. They have tons of resources on fall gardening, spring gardening, doing cover crops in your garden, anything that could be affecting your plants. If you are looking at those resources, you're still having trouble, you're not sure what you're looking at, then a great resource is going to be through an extension educator that we work very closely with in our office, Amanda Mosman. So we'll have her information either on screen or in the chat as well, and she is a great resource to call up or email, and you can send pictures and say, I am struggling with this in my garden, what should I do? And she will figure it out for you, get all that information from you, and I bet she will find your solution in no time. So Purdue Extension is a great resource in that way. Our website also has some resources on cover crops and gardening at warrickswcd.com. So you can always go on there and see if we're going to be having any events related to gardening or any events related to cover crops, and what resources we have on there as well. All right, so we have got our fall garden all set up here at the Warrick 4-H grounds. So this is at the actual fairgrounds. So if you want to come out here and take a look at our garden, you can look at our rain garden, and you can also check up and see how our fall garden is coming along and how our cover crops are coming along. And of course, if you come out and if there's anything ready to harvest, you're welcome to take some carrots or some turnips, whatever we might have coming up at that time when you come out and to check it out. And feel free to do as much weeding as you want. You don't have to ask permission for that. You can just come right out and do it. So we've got some materials at the office that are available if you want to swing by, some books on gardening or on no-till or cover cropping in your garden. So you're welcome to stop by. You can borrow those books or rent them out for free. Or you can come and get some free cover crop seed or use any of the other resources we have there. Feel free to give us a call at the office or to stop in if you've got any questions. And feel free to call Purdue Extension if you have any issues with your garden as well, or any questions about your garden. So tune in next time for another Green Bites that we'll be doing. It'll be the same time next month, different day, but same time every time. So thank you for coming along with us. I'm glad that you stayed for the whole video. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat so that we can maybe help find you an answer. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.